Hello, this is your host of CivilNet, Hacopian, and we are honored and very pleased to have with us the ambassador of the European Union in Armenia, Andrea Wiktorin.
Pleasure to be here.
Ambassador, thank you for coming. You and the institution you represent has been significantly in the news in the last couple of weeks, primarily because of the large aid and investment package that was announced a couple of weeks ago. It's sort of the talk of the country, or the political circles at least. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to first of all give you an opportunity to explain what this program is, what the scale of it is, what is it focused on, and just for people to get a better sense of the work that you're going to be doing here over the next 5 years.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think it is worthwhile to give a little bit of an explanation. First of all, I should say we started rather early in the year to discuss with our partners in the Eastern Partnership how we develop the future cooperation. So there is a process which is ongoing and which will end with the Eastern Partnership Summit in December in Brussels. Linked to this, we also work, and it is now in the final stage, about what we call multi-indicative program, which is, let's say, the priorities we are agreeing with the government and stakeholders on our cooperation over the next 7 years. So this is an ongoing process, and in the same time we worked on, let's say, an economic and investment plan for the countries of the Eastern Partnership to help them overcome the crisis, the COVID crisis. Well, in the Armenian case, we have two conflict situations, and to help them getting economic recovery, stability, and prosperity. So this was announced in the beginning of July by Commissioner Vahey and High Representative Borrell, which means an overall idea for the 6 countries. There we had an estimate of, let's say, the contribution the European Union is giving for all 6 countries as grants, and this will be combined with budgetary guarantees, with loans, with blending, and we hope to get also private investment. From this general figure, we really made estimates per country. So that's why we ended up to say, well, with the combination of grants of the European Union and loans from the European Investment Bank, which is our European bank, and the EBRD, we can come up to 1.6 billion. And this could also trigger more engagement by the private sector investment here in Armenia, which could bring us up to 2.6 billion. So the first thing I have to underline, this is not an aid package. I think some people misunderstood it. It is really a plan for investment, and we are heading for 5 flagships, which is roughly economy, small and medium-sized enterprise. It is connectivity, which is infrastructure, especially the north-south connection. It is digitalization, science, technology, and it is the support for the south, because this is, I think, the most vulnerable region right now.
South being Syunik.
Syunik. And then the 5th is Green Yerevan, which again brings our Green Deal in it, climate change, energy efficiency. So these are the 5 areas we have developed. The Prime Minister, during the recent high-ranking visits, added 2 initiatives which would be on education and waste management and water management. This, in a nutshell, is now, let's say, a plan, and now we have to fill it with content. Means, as I said, it is not an aid package. It is, let's say, a common endeavor to find the right areas and really to develop projects that can also attract both EIB and EBRD, but then private banks and also investment by European companies. And on this we are working together with the Office of Deputy Prime Minister Grigoryan. I think we both agreed that we need a roadmap where to start and how to have a follow-up, because it's also a question of the absorption capacity. And what we have to see, it is naturally linked to a broader context. We need policy strategies on certain areas. We need to discuss the risk assessment, also if we want to give loans, and also to see how we can integrate as much stakeholder as needed. So in our understanding, this will be done with the government, yes, but we have to talk to the business community. We have to talk to institutions and organizations you have, for example, in the area of high tech. There are already very good examples, and the idea is to develop this further. So it will depend how fast we can develop these projects, and this is an ongoing process.
Thank you for the very good explanation. I'm glad you used the word investment rather than aid, because investment is always better than aid. I think when I was doing the math on this for people to get a sort of the scale of this, given the size of the Armenian GDP, you're looking at something like depending on how large the program is, 4 to 6% of GDP being spent on infrastructure over a course of 4 or 5 years, which for any economy is significant, because you talked about the absorption issue. From what I've understood from your literature, roughly your program is triaged into infrastructure first, then renewables, then small business support, or some combination thereof. I could be mistaken, but that's the impression that I got from your literature. And one of the big questions with this is, how do you judge success in a program like this? Because we all have, unfortunately, not just in Armenia, worldwide, there's a lot of, we just saw the example of Afghanistan and the scale of money that was spent and what actually got done. How do you quantify success in each of these different categories? How much transparency, how much control do you have over, what actually gets accomplished? How do you quantify success in your systems?
Well, first of all, I should say we are complicated sometimes. We have very strict rules in the European Union because we are spending the European taxpayers' money, which means we have a wonderful Bible, which is called financial regulations. And this is really our guideline, how we work on certain things. So it means we are always under heavy scrutiny, and we are following the procedures. So naturally we have targets, but we have to develop these targets together with the government. Let's say if I talk about economy, we are targeting 30,000 SMEs. Yeah?
Could you explain what SMEs are?
Small and medium-sized enterprises, yeah. Sorry, that is another disease that we always talk in abbreviations. And there you can see whether we will have a success, simply because we can help individuals, but also, let's say, groups of people who want to create a new company in certain areas, whether they succeed or not, whether we can give a grant. And it is also knowledge-based. It is not only money. That's I want really to underline. It is knowledge-based, and I think there you can clearly see the result. On the other things, I think the big infrastructure projects normally need a feasibility study, and you also have the international financial institutions in it, who also have a checklist. So before we start, we have to be sure that it is a mature project for both sides, for the Armenian side, but also for the European side. And then we have nearly every year a delegation coming in from Brussels who do monitoring, and they look at certain bigger programs, they look at smaller projects. We have an audit system, so we always have to decide which projects need to be audited, and then you have in independent experts coming in and looking at this. So we are obliged to this because we also have to give afterwards, let's say, a report to the parliament because they want to know what we are doing with the money. On our side, we are transparent. And I would say we do already quite a lot in this country. Naturally, you sometimes have situations where things develop in a different direction. But I can say right now that there is a good cooperation with the government, and especially we are very interested to get everybody on board. This is a little bit the principle of the European Union. That's why I say private business, civil society, they should be in it.
Thank you for the answer and the clarification. I like to always reduce things to the size, so not to the level of the most ordinary person, because all of these things, whatever you do in politics, at the end of the day, it's really how do you change the lives of ordinary people.
Exactly.
So I am a 35-year-old woman in Vanator, and I have a very good idea, and I have, I know what I'm doing, and a small business loan can transform me, my community, my family, my neighborhood. But I don't have language skills. I don't have the connections. Obviously, as you know, countries in this part of the world are very capital-centric. And it's very easy for the kids that spent 3 years in Germany or they went to Cambridge to hook up with these things and get grants, loans, and make these connections. How do you translate these programs, especially if you're doing a very wide small business support? How do you translate this into something that the most ordinary people can think about and then engage, and how would they even engage realistically?
I think I have to make one comment before. This is now one tool, this investment plan. We should not forget that we are quite active in this country with quite an amount of money in exactly these areas. So we have an annual action plan, how we work together. This year, for example, it's very clear. It's recovery, resilience, reforms. These are the three elements. And we have, because you said Vanator, you did me a favor. So we have in Armenia, we have so-called priority regions. This was discussed before, before 2020. So we have ongoing projects in the three northern masses. Lori, Chirac, and Tavush. And we are doing exactly this. There we are active with programs in the field of innovation, of tourism. We are active in the field of agriculture. And the idea of these programs is that we often offer grants. We have also a program which is really targeted to the regional development, and this means we want to combine local authorities and private initiatives. And if you follow us on Facebook, you can see we have right now stories of people who did exactly what you asked. They started a business. Either they produce tea, or they are in certain areas, in services. We have programs where we give advice how to do a business plan. That's the first thing. You decide you want to open a hairdresser shop, you have at least to learn the basics. We have programs supporting women in business because, by the way, the Prime Minister also said that this is one of his priorities now. But really how to help women to open a business, to give the advice. I give you another example. We have a business incubator out of a program we made for Syrian Armenians who came to Armenia, refugees, who came where we gave psychological but also basic support. But we have this business incubator and we created 44 companies. 22 of them are led by women. So these are all ongoing projects, and I use some of the products where we are proud to be in it. And I think it is, you said one important thing, this figure sounds so impressive. I liked what the Deputy Prime Minister told me and said it is not so much about the figure. It is about common values and a common objective to make this country resilient and prosperous and to develop the economic potential of this country. I think this is the gist of our cooperation. I talk about cooperation. So now you have technical assistance, you have expertise, and now you have this big investment program, and this has to fit together. And I want, not that we invent the wheel. We already have a lot of wheels in this country. I want that we take the examples we have of successful cooperation and then transfer it. If we want to support SMEs, it is naturally the idea of build venture funds. We already have one. We have the idea of what is meant in this investment plan we have with the Amber Capital Fund, which is the first time it was rather difficult. Cooperation, European Union, EBRD, and Amber Capitals.
First of all, if you've actually helped Syrian refugees open up restaurants, you've done much for the cuisine of this country. So I was going to thank you just for that. And I think we all enjoy that on a daily basis. So thanks on that. We'll move on to sort of the, what I call the harder political questions. I was a consultant for 30 years, and I know you've been a diplomat probably just as long. We all know there's an element of politics, which is sort of organized cynicism, and that's just the way it is. Many people look at your renounced programs, and the cynic in them says, well, you know, they last year this time, this country and Artsakh were attacked by the totalitarian regime to the east of us, and the European Union did or said nothing. So this is makeup for that, for the lack of action last year, or a lack of speaking up, or some sense that there was some moral equivalency between these two sides. Obviously, we all have our opinions about what's what. How do you respond to those critics?
I would first say, A, it is a regional program, as an idea, which we have developed for quite some time. Secondly, I would say the European Union was there. I know that not everybody is agreeing with us, but there was an engagement both by the High Representative, by other institutions, by President Michel. I think it was an extremely difficult period. It was also a difficult period for us here as a delegation. We tried to go via diplomatic channels, and it is difficult in a war to use diplomatic channels and to be seen, because certain things are done not publicly, they are done directly and silently. What I would say is that we are interested, and this we expressed. I think we had rather high-ranking visits here in summer, expressing our willingness and our offer to do more, because I think we agree, and this is the explicit position of the Armenian government, that this conflict should be solved with the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group. So we are supporting them. We did so. We did also last year so. But we want to offer our support. We, I think, already did so in helping to solve the humanitarian crisis, means a return of the captives. Again, this is something you do directly, not loudly. And the willingness is to play a role in this was expressed by President Michel when he was here. We also offered that we can give support, if we are asked to, in the question to solve the border issue, because this is, I think, crucial. And there we could imagine different things to do, from working as a facilitator or helping negotiations up to then offering support if really the negotiations on demarcation and delimitation would start. We would, I think we are interested to have, let's say, a sort of negotiations process start. Again, we stand ready. We want a sustainable solution. And in the end, we want peace for this region. This
well, we all want that. We all want that. I don't think your answers are going to satisfy many people, but these are. I appreciate your candor and stating your positions clearly. On the same topic, there's two things. You mentioned the issue of the POWs, which is a significant issue here. We all, from the perspective of most people, there's no reason when the war ends the POWs should be held as hostages by what many here perceive to be this criminalized regime in Baku. And obviously to have peace, you need goodwill on both sides. It's not a one-sided thing. And what we have seen in the war is this hostage taking essentially with the POWs, which is absolutely no reason to. When there were Azeri POWs that were entirely returned, and they are where they need to be with their families. While there are people being held for political purposes, I'll give you 10 for this, I'll give you 5 for that, like it's some Middle Eastern bazaar. And then the most atrocious thing that we've seen outside of direct human rights violations is this Nazi hate park that they've built in Baku. Has your institution ever spoken directly about how distasteful that is and how disgusting it is to use that kind of imagery, which, as you know, comes straight out of anti-Semitic imagery of the 1930s? Has the EU ever made itself clear about that with the Baku regime or not?
I think there was a very clear statement we made in April when we were asked here. Yes, it is a topic in discussions, and we totally agree. This is distasteful, this doesn't help anything, this creates hate. On this we agree. And we are in constant contact also with Baku, and I'm sure I was not there because I'm the ambassador here, but these questions were mentioned. But there was a quite outspoken statement by the spokesperson, which clearly reflects our position.
Well, I wanted to thank you very much for joining us. I want to thank you for your clear and concise answers. I'm sure not everyone will agree with everything, but that's the nature of any kind of a discussion. It's a dialogue, and thank you very much for enlightening us about your programs.
Thank you so much.
This is your host of CivilNet, Hacopian. Thank you for joining us.